different identified roles within that household. My grandfather led the house in a respectful manner, and women are meant to think, oh, men lead households means that you're going to be subjugated and make them a sandwich. You're going to be barefoot and pregnant. Which, by the way, as a pregnant woman, I'd love to be barefoot right now. I don't know why that's getting a bad rep. It really is comfortable. It's a great way to be. I'd love to be making a sandwich right now, barefoot and pregnant. But they use these sort of images and make you think that there's something dirty about it. And it's the best part of every single day that I have is making it home to my family, providing a meal for them, having that time, sharing stories, raising your children. So what they've done is they've perverted those things, right? They've made it seem dirty and wrong. Men need their men time. Women need their women time. We are a different species. The things that
we need to be anchored to the beauty of antiquity.
We get no, it's horrible, and it's leading to people that are gender confused not being able to go to the restroom, and you're going, what are you doing? And when you start striving towards things just for the sake of striving, you actually end up backwards, right?
Well, these people are for Dave Rubin having a kid. They're for Dave Rubin destroying the nuclear family. They're for Dave Rubin having 2 kids with 2 different women and a surrogate. They are for women having 2 men having kids. 2 gays should not be allowed to have kids. They have Dave Rubin and Rob Smith speaking at Turning Point events. We don't believe in a transcendent new world. You don't believe in a nuclear family. You congratulated Dave Rubin. Candice Owens congratulated Dave Rubin. Charlie Kirk congratulated Dave Rubin. The Blaze congratulated Dave Rubin. Dennis Prager's College, Prager University congratulated Dave Rubin.
Beautiful thing to see. How do we get to a place where, and this maybe you can help me. Why is it smart people, right, that believe the dumbest stuff? Like, you have to go to college to believe some of this stuff. It's so stupid.
You do. When people tell me how many degrees they have, I know that they're further and further from reality, right? Because they have it. Go, I'm smart. I'm applying for jobs.
Speaking of insidious movements that have lied to people, I saw a lot of Black Lives Matter flags driving on the way here.
Raised billions of dollars worldwide, and nobody, not a single building, not a single Black Lives Matter corporate office, at least, where I can see that they're hiring Black students. Instead, they burned down Black neighborhoods. Have you seen the neighborhoods that hosted the riots? They burned down police precincts. They can't get police to police the streets anymore. We have autonomous zones. Criminality has never been higher in these inner cities. You destroyed Black lives because it felt good to march in the street and say Black Lives Matter. And I just kept saying to people, I do not betray my race. I betray stupidity all the time, and stupidity comes in many different colors.
Candice is not a conservative. She's a liberal Republican who's been displaced by the Democratic Party. Democratic Party left Candice Owens. She didn't leave it. She's still a liberal. She's not a conservative.
Smart people, again, get it so wrong.
Well, it turns out that the smart people are not that smart. And by the way, this is not a left or right issue, because the capitulation happened on both sides. On the left, it's like, yay, change in your Black Lives Matter T-shirt for the, the movement is every 5 weeks. You got to keep up with it. And, save us, Dr. Fauci. We love you, Dr. George Floyd, whatever it is. It's just the new thing, right, that they can be shrieking about because they're fundamentally unhappy. But on the right, what you saw was people that didn't have the courage to speak out about it, because race still makes people uncomfortable, right? And that it makes people uncomfortable for what I just said, right? Because they're borrowing these words that actually have an entirely different meaning. So it became this threat, this, political bullet to your head. You either support Black Lives Matter or you're a racist. No. There's more like that. There's a lot of.
Well, what about the people at the Daily Wire? You just support blacks and Hispanics coming into this country, or you're a racist. If you support the Asian and Europe people coming to America, then you're a racist. You're a white nationalist, because they're the only ones that can assimilate. They're the only ones that can assimilate to America is Europe and Asian people. And sorry, they're mostly white people that come from those countries. All of a sudden, then you're a racist. You're a racist like Nick Fuentes. you're a racist. So I don't understand what they're talking about here. Talking about racism, you're a racist if you want a nation that assimilates and to have a values of such country that's not changed by blacks and Hispanics to African and Mexican cultures.
Deeper than the surface level. You have a right to think critically. You have a right to perhaps see.
Yeah, think critically that we don't want our country changed.
Do a better job of not being
ethnic changes because they start voting their interest of Mexico and not America.
The last thing, Candice, I'm going to talk to you about is something you did a phenomenal documentary on Carter, and you and I both agree, and a lot of eyes have been open to this, that one of the great threats to liberty and humanity is the stranglehold that big pharma has over our livelihood and the decisions that we can and cannot make. I mean, mandatory vaccines to all of this, it's from the moment you're born, you're kind of in this biomedical pharma fascist state. Expand on that, talk about your documentary, and talk about how this actually transcends political issues, because some of the greatest apologists for corporate pharmaceutical dominance are actually on the right.
Yeah, well, we have more people, big pharma lobbyists in DC than we have representatives in Congress. It's a huge problem. These people are bought and paid for, and big pharma is incredibly wealthy. And you are living in a time where, if you thought Pablo Escobar and El Chapo were big, you need to look around your own country because.
Well, guess what? Well, this is the biggest drug cartel. Ben Shapiro pimping his wife on his podcast about getting the booster shot and getting shots, and I'm boosted. I got 2 shots and I'm boosted. And I'll probably get the 4th shot and the second booster if it comes down to it. Ben Shapiro said, not me, because his wife's pushing the shot that causes blood clots and injuries. But he's the biggest pusher of the shot. Yes, yeah, well, you can have your freedoms to not get it. I don't believe you should be forced to get it. But Ben, you're still for getting the shot.
They saw the way that people were forced and what OSHA tried to do, what the CDC has been trying to do to force people to put a substance in their body, even.
Come on, Ben, you can't have nuance on this anymore. People are getting blood clots. You can't support the shot no more, Ben.
My story was obviously
the shot should not be on the market, Ben.
To get certain vaccines, but to make it clear, when we had to get vaccines, from the time that we were 0 until 18, I think I had to get maybe 12. Today, kids have to get 70 plus, about 75 vaccines. So, and let me tell you, the kids are not healthier today than they were when I was growing up. They're sicker than they've ever been. Everyone's got an allergy, an autoimmune disorder. I can't have gluten. I'm allergic to peanuts. That's another phenomenon. Like when I was growing up, there was like 1 kid in class, and now it's everybody's got all of these allergies. Fortunately, and I do say this fortunately because God works in mysterious ways, I was injured by the Gardasil vaccine. When I was 20 and I had to get that vaccine. I came back from college and I got the vaccine and I had a seizure in the office. I'd never had a seizure in my life. And when I kind of woke up from that episode and the doctor said, well, you shouldn't complete this. And I began researching just that vaccine. I was very horrified at what I found, which was just, first and foremost, cervical cancer rate.
Then tell your boss, Ben Shapiro, stop pushing the shot. Because his wife works for a pharmaceutical company. She's compromised. Ben's wife is compromised.
They've now expanded it, and now somehow men have to get it too. I don't even know how we got there. But it made me realize how corrupt and how the data was, how it was completely lied to, how they used a fear campaign regarding cancer to force me into making a decision that I didn't really fully understand. When I became a mom, I made it my job. And this is why I talk about feminism needing the idea of modern feminism needing to die, because it should be our job. Women should be the CIA, the FBI, the DHS when it comes to our children. The buck should stop with mom. I just began researching vaccines in general and was horrified at what I found and just wanted to share it and show people the FDA inserts, the warnings on there, everything that you're seeing kids have, right on the FDA website. Will tell you that these are potential reactions that can happen if you get these vaccines. I am not ever telling people what to do with their lives or what not to do with their lives, but I believe that you cannot make a sound decision unless you were actually given the real information, and that's what it's all about.
But right wingers want to play both sides of this. You can get the shot. You should have the rights to get the shot. I think you should get the shot, but you don't have to get the shot. So that's kind of like wishy-washy, man. You need to be clear. The shot is dangerous and it should be not available.
So, you see these videos of them announcing the repealing of the mask mandate. I mean, it's like a 90-10 issue, right? I mean, people are finally happy. Now, the fact that you have to be happy to get your basic rights to breathe freely back, that's very perverted, honestly, right?
I wouldn't celebrate it because of that. We have
Right.
to stop cheering when we get our basic.
Yeah,
human
so it's like you
freedoms
get back to where you were. It's like, okay, not so fast, right? So it's like you get your natural rights back. But I think it has opened people's eyes to at least challenge these power structures, right?
And it's the same thing, by the way, going back to the either or scenario. So if I say that I think the Gardasil vaccine was bad, people would say you're anti-vax. Again, it's that either it's so bifurcated. It's not that binary. You can say I have questions about vaccines without being anti-vax. People who have been vaxxed their entire lives didn't want to get the COVID vaccine were suddenly called anti-vax, right? You can say I don't agree with COVID policy, and they're calling you a grandpa killer. You want grandpa to be dead if you don't agree with lockdowns. So you constantly have a society that's afraid to think outside of the box, or else they're going to be branded with the scarlet letter. And I'm happy to wear all the scarlet letters when it comes to making decisions for myself and for my right to be free.
And I want to say this before we get to some questions. You know how rare it is for someone with Candice's platform to actually talk about these issues one after the other. You see, the corporate media, they want people like Candice just to say the same thing over and over again, right? Dr. Fauci, made his.
Well, the Daily Wire's got movies that only some of the people are going to see. And we saw yesterday on the News and Why It Matters about Yako Bullion saying that we only need 30% of the market to do this alt economy, alt economy. So we have, what is it, Jeremy's Razors? Well, only 30% of people are going to get it. Well, all you need is 30%. Well, good luck surviving on 30%. Their signing percentage is Gillette. Then guess what? Gillette's going to win and you're going to be out of business. You can't survive on just 30%. And plus, what's the 30% going to do? They're going to still buy Gillette, most of them. They're not going to buy. How many people is going to buy Jeremy's razors? Enough to support his Jeremy's razors? Unless he just has a small supply of razors? How many people is going to buy the razors? How many people?
Conservative center-right audience, right? So here's some ground rules. If someone asks a question that you find to be reprehensible or disagree with, don't shout them down. Don't interrupt them. Let them get the question out. Take some courage to come to a place that's mostly conservative and ask a question. We are going to show the left courtesy and respect, even though they don't show us that same courtesy and respect.
So we're going to play nice with a bunch of people that don't play nice to us. That's real nice, Charlie Kirk. Play nice to people that don't play nice to us. Yeah, see, we want to play by the rules while they play dirty. Good luck winning that way, Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, I mean, the most rewarding things I hear from our podcast, our radio show, and our speaking is two things. People that say, you totally changed my mind on a topic or issue or perspective. The most rewarding thing is where people say they gave their life to Christ because of what we're doing. That's the most important thing, right?
We can't give your life to Christ and support Dave Rubin having kids and destroying the nuclear family when you already support his marriage too, by the way. Dave Rubin and Dave. You can't be with Christ and be for marriage and for gays and gay adoption and gays having kids, Charlie Kirk.
Never lose the sort of optimism that people can change their mind. But the second thing that I love that I hear at events are people that were afraid to speak out. They agreed, and now they're speaking out because of what they hear. That's almost equally rewarding, and it's close. It's not as morally important, but you can make an argument it's in the same ballpark. Because if good people agree with you and they don't repeat what they hear that they know is true, then the event just dies after we're done, right? But if some of you are now inspired because of what you hear to go talk for the rest of your life in your family or your community or your workplace, then all of a sudden we'll turn this massive event into a movement that could change Milwaukee for the better and Wisconsin for the better. And so when I hear that, that really gives me a great deal of satisfaction.
I totally agree with that. I think that's a great answer. I second that. Check.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello, Charlie. Hello, Cadence. I'm an Eagle Scout and in between the joining the Boy Scouts. And within the past 5 years, I've seen the program change a lot. How do you think it shaped me as a man, and I know it's for other people in the audience too. How do you think the programs like the BSA, Girl Scouts, and other youth programs will shape the future of America?
So I'm an Eagle Scout, so I could talk.
Well, why do you care about the Boy Scouts if you're okay with gays in the military? You support Dave Rubin and Ross Smith. They want to join the military. So what? Gays can go in the Boy Scouts and do gay stuff on other kids there.
My life was very impacted favorably. The Boy Scouts. I went up to Camp Napawon actually in Wild Rose, Wisconsin. Growing up there, she was.
So what values you want them to teach now? You want to teach gay stuff? Hey, you can be gay. Gay's okay by Christians now.
Every single time. And I say, why? They let girls into the Boy Scouts, which is complete. First of all, just on its face, it's like the dumbest thing you could possibly imagine, right? But it's also morally wrong. And here's why. And Candice touched on this earlier. Boys being around boys and men being around men is important for development of individuals, especially for teenagers. And every clinical study will show this, you have boys amongst one another trying to get stronger or complete an obstacle course. The minute you put one girl within the zip code of that, all their behavior changes. It changes it's true. Instead of trying to create teams or lift one another, they're all now trying to impress the girl, and then they react to the embarrassment of the failure of how the girl reacts to them doing the obstacle course or whatever. The Boy Scouts has lost all validity, not to mention they're covering up the sex abuse stuff, which is just awful. That's bad. But unfortunately, that's very widespread in our institutions in our country. So that needs to be called about. So what's the future of the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts? There's now competitors against Boy Scouts. I can't remember the name of it. Trail Life, I think is what it's called, and they're growing. I don't know if you're a Boy Scout or an Eagle Scout or not. I didn't catch that.
I am an Eagle Scout.
You're an Eagle Scout, great. So look, you got through it. I tell parents, take your kids out of the Boy Scouts immediately and totally. I hope they go bankrupt.
Even though you got people you support, they probably went to them, like Bray White. He goes to the Daily Wire.
Charlie and Candice, thank you for coming. My name is KJ Eichstead, I'm 28, so I feel like I can relate to a lot of what you do. My question I wanted to ask you is someone who builds brands for a living and helps other people build their brands. I wanted to ask you about Elon Musk, who has the most powerful brand in the world, and also what advice would you give to people for building a brand in the face of controversy and adversity?
Okay, I'm going to start with the Elon Musk question. I think what he is doing is fantastic, and there's no way to lose. And what I mean by that is that obviously Twitter is the Twitter is actually going to block this, obviously. But it doesn't matter because it's leading to a global awakening about just how corrupt the system is. And so I think this has been one of those moments of sunshine, which has provided like a disinfectant, and people are really seeing just how corrupt it is. I mean, there's no reason not to accept that deal. I mean, Twitter as a company has been floundering. I mean, they have not earned any money for their shareholders. They won't even bring it to them.
Well, the Blaze is corrupt too, destroying of the nuclear family.
That if he ever got into that company,
Hey, Ruben, you can't have kids.
Saudi Arabia, like suddenly the left is supporting. So I know, like so we were saying, like just speaking out and saying I'm against this. And I've said this for years. I mean, Twitter has been operating bot accounts. They've been creating faux trends, things that are not possibly trending. They make trend. I think they have an allegiance with certain publications as well. The Daily Beast somehow has a way to make their stories trend. And there's a lot of political corruption. I think they put a ton of fake followers around people that they want. Like I believe AOC they created overnight. I really do believe
Twitter's more honest than the Blaze is. We know they hate our guts and our values. The Blaze pretends to support our values while destroying the nuclear family with Dave Rubin. You know how many people Dave Rubin got to congratulate him and change their position, like Sarah Gonzalez and others?
Money, and that'll be that. And he made tons of money. It's great, and America will be better, perhaps seeing it all up. Like America will have been better just for having an opportunity to see just how dysfunctional it is and just how corrupt and how we really don't live in the economy in the world that we believe that we do.
I'll answer the brand. Any thoughts on the brand?
Oh, no, you can go. You can answer that.
So just on the Twitter thing, super quick. This is where I disagree with some people on the right that are market fundamentalists. I love markets, Candice loves markets, but the Twitter example shows that the profit motive is actually not the highest in the hierarchy. It is, and we've always believed that the profit motive drives all human behavior, and that's wrong. If that was true, they would accept the Elon Musk deal and the deal would be done. There are things that matter more than the profit motive, and that's the prestige and the power motive, which actually matters a lot more than the profit motive when you talk about human psychology. So the Twitter board of directors, they're not running a company. They're running something close to like a Democrat super PAC regime propaganda censorship machine that...
Yes, well said.
Thank you. That exists to stifle the voices they don't like and elevate the ones they like. And so it just goes into show how hard they're fighting. Like, yeah, Saudi Prince comes out. Really, how's freedom of speech in Riyadh in the spring? I'd love to hear about that. How's press freedom in Medina? Like, can you say something against Muhammad during Ramadan in Saudi? Of course not. Like, it's the greatest hypocrisy ever that a Saudi prince tries to come and be like, yes, I'm going to stand for free speech. Like, how about you sit this one out? Like, the one issue the Saudis should sit out is like how they treat journalists. Like, not exactly a lot of credibility in the last couple decades on that issue. Like, maybe oil exploration, you guys can, chime in next time. So, but it shows a window into how important censorship is to these people, that they need the ability to shut us up. I'm suspended from Twitter right now. First, I didn't do anything wrong. And I love how people applaud, right? And I called Rachel Levine. I said it was Richard Levine. Now Rachel used to be Richard. It's called dead naming. You can't do that. I refuse to delete the tweet. I refuse to engage in the Soviet show trial where like you have to acknowledge doing something wrong even though you didn't. Candice is exactly right, though. I don't think the deal's going to go through. I don't want to be cynical, but I think they have unintentionally red-pilled the world's richest man, which might about be.
There's nothing wrong with deleting the tweet as long as you don't apologize or bend the knee and you still continue to post stuff that they don't like, then that's because I'm still posting things that they don't agree with. Even though I deleted my tweet because I wasn't going to be gone because that's the public square. There's nothing wrong with deleting stuff to get back on as long as you don't apologize.
Thank you. Sorry on the brand thing. I don't want to spend too much time on it. Lean into the controversy. That's my advice. I know that's short. Controversy can be the greatest signal boost to any brand if you play it right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Charlie and Candice. My name is Brian. In light of the holiday, I wanted to ask, would America be a freer country if we were free?
I was like, what holiday is it? Sorry, guys. Would America be a
freer country if we was legal?
Nope, it would not be, and it would not at all be. And here's what I'm going to say, and I just spoke about this. For such a long time, people kept saying the slippery slope wasn't real, right? Like, oh, if we legalize pot, we'll just be a freer country, I don't know, a more relaxed country, whatever they thought it was going to be. But it's not like we're just gonna.
Well, we are incarcerating more people because it is illegal in most places. It's not federally recognized yet. It's only in certain states.
Marijuana in certain states, right? So now we have the argument that we're fighting is like, forget marijuana. We now have places in New York City where you can go shoot up, and the government will give you a needle and a syringe to be able to do that. You now have, I think, Oregon's leading the charge on that. They've decriminalized every drug. Yeah, they have injection sites. They decriminalized every single drug. So I am a person that does not believe that it would render people freer. I don't believe that at all. If we're discussing the tenets of whether or not you believe marijuana is more harmful than of a substance than alcohol, I would probably say no. And alcohol has been detrimental to people and has killed more people and things of that nature. But when we're talking about whether or not either is good for society as a whole, absolutely not. I actually stand really on the opposite side of that issue because of what we are seeing today with all the things that the left is trying to do with every single drug, And it started with marijuana. We're just going to decriminalize marijuana. We're just going to legalize marijuana, and that's going to be it. It's never going to be it.
Yeah, and I think you asked a really important question. You used a specific word. You said, would it be freer? Depends what your definition of freer is. Do you have a proper definition of freedom, or do you have kind of this classical liberal social degeneracy view of freedom, right? So is freedom meaning you could have public nudity and defecate on the streets? I think that makes everyone less free and less happy. So freedom is the pursuit of virtue, right? Freedom is getting in alignment with natural law and going towards a desirable outcome so you can live in harmony with God's commands. Freedom is not being able to just go to an injection site and having pleasure at will. In fact, I think that makes people less free. And everyone believes
them a
this.
slave to their pleasures.
Totally. I mean, if you meet an alcoholic, they're the least free people in the world.
Yeah.
An alcoholic is the least free person in the world.
I'm the most free in my sobriety. I really am.
Same.
And I don't.
But I'm glad alcohol is legal, though. I wouldn't make it illegal.
No, but
this is not the same as pornography. Pornography is way worse than alcohol. Except for those alcoholics, they need to quit doing it.
No one wants to say that.
And it's funny because I was even talking about you really do become a slave to your pleasure. And it's funny because I was just talking about today with my assistant who's backstage. I said, how much money would you have in your bank account if you never drink alcohol? When I think about that, I want to cry.
Don't alcohol shame. Don't alcohol shame. I drink, but I don't get drunk, and I know when to stop. Don't alcohol shame there, Candice.
So I don't say
Don't
that
alcohol
because of,
shame.
like, arrogance behind it. Not like, oh, like, I'm so good because I don't drink now. But it's interesting to think that if I had practiced that temperance and I said, actually, I'm not going to drink, it scares me.
Because you don't drink doesn't mean you have to shame other people.
I would have been a millionaire.
Of course, if you're an alcoholic, don't drink.
So I'm just not. I'm not one of those people that stands on stage and is like, drink and smoke more. You know, I get being young. I get the experimentation that comes with being young, and I don't judge it at all because trust me, this girl took the most liberal route to conservatism that you will ever find. But no, it doesn't.
You're not a conservative. You're a liberal Republican. Stop lying. You're a liberal Republican. I'm a liberal Republican too. Or actually a liberal independent. I'm a liberal independent. But I admit I'm a liberal. Why can't you admit it? You're a liberal Republican. You're not a conservative. You're a liberal that's been displaced.
Quickly rushes serotonin, dopamine, and external influence, whether it be pornography, marijuana, methamphetamines.
Don't put them all on the same level as pornography now. Alcohol is responsible, is okay.
Be careful, because we know from neurology is our bodies are so amazing, you start to build tolerance to that price, and then all of a sudden the downside is a lot worse than the upside. And we're living in a country with 100,000 plus drug overdoses every single year. And we also live in the most medicated, thanks to pharma, the most drug addicted, thanks to the other issues, and the most sad, depressive, suicidal generation in history. Thanks for being here tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you guys, anyone disagrees, you guys can chime in. The Turning Point people can help navigate you through that. Yes, okay.
Hi, Candice. Hi, Charlie. My name is Greta. I am a small business owner in Marquette, Michigan. I drive 5 hours to be here.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
The small issue is that I run my business in a primarily liberal city, and I'm wondering your advice on how I exist as a small business owner in a liberal area and still discuss. I guess so. I have a platform on Instagram. Can I open up that Instagram to discuss ideas? And I guess my question is, how do I exist as a small business owner with conservative ideals in a liberal space?
What is your business out of curiosity?
I run a pop-up shop. It's only open 3 days a month, and we sell women's clothing and home decor.
Yeah, I mean, I think you just do what you're doing. If your product is good, it's great. The only thing I would recommend that you do is pick up and move your business to a conservative leaning. Because and I'm not saying that because I'm like rah conservatives. It's because you will start to realize that when you're in liberal districts, they create government policies that are meant to punish and penalize people for being successful. You're seeing California being the state that has been exemplary to exactly that. If you're a good person that follows the law, you start a business, they are going to tax you into oblivion and transfer those tax dollars to support the criminals on the street that are defecating and need to shoot up. And it's like I said, there couldn't be a more clear example than looking at what has really happened in cities like New York City and California and Chicago. So I always say that if you're an entrepreneur, put yourself into a position where you're surrounded by politicians that support entrepreneurship, or they will actually award people that are doing good things in their community as opposed to penalizing them. Because eventually, and if you're in a super liberal area, their guns turn towards you because they hate success, right? There's something wrong with you getting ahead. Look at you. You're young, you're beautiful, you're white, God forbid, right? And so I especially seeing that in the example of California, how they just suddenly demonized the entrepreneur and made it seem as if, well, you make this much money, you should pay more in taxes. It's the reason why I picked up and I moved to Tennessee and I run my businesses from the South.
I agree. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Hello.
Hello.
Huge fan here. Well, my name is Simone. I'm 28 years old. I actually graduated from UW about 5 years ago, and I was a hardcore liberal. Obviously, I'm here today. We switched over, have much more conservative values. I'm Christian, faith comes first.
And Dave Rubin and Rob Smith are a sin, right? They commit a sin of homosexuality, right? They shouldn't be speaking at Turning Point, right?
And friends have totally different viewpoints than you, or not even listening to hearing your viewpoints. How do you deal with that?
Make new friends, because that's optional. Seriously, it's not, life is too short, and I'm not saying that your job shouldn't be, people are sometimes just not ready to hear information. And I realize that even with family members, that's a little more permanent, right? You're having family members that disagree with you. I even told you the stories of what I went through coming out as a conservative on a public stage. When my family was so tied and boggled down, the majority of my family was liberal at that time. Things have changed. They just weren't ready to hear the message, but then eventually the message comes to them in the form of their surroundings, right? Suddenly they're looking around, and illegal immigrants are being dropped off at their front desk. They're trying to enroll into their kids, like my sisters, into classes, and they're dealing with all the woke crap. They're dealing with having their small children that are being
To I think two questions previously. She asked about her recommending moving her conservative business to a conservative area. Would you recommend that for more liberal businesses to be doing it well, and would you also recommend that for not necessarily businesses, but just people in general to be moving out of the communities they disagree with and into their surrounded by people who they agree with, and vice versa?
Oh, I don't think the business itself is conservative or liberal when I say that. So I don't think that you can have like, if you make clothes and they're good, you make clothes and they're good. But the free market will determine that, right? So what I mean is that if you are an entrepreneur, you have to start thinking about the policies that are in place where you live. And yes, I'm a big believer that you have to think about the values of where you live as well. So like, and for every regard, whether it's business, whether it's family, I mean, this has become such a huge discussion when you have kids, right? Well, what kind of public school system, where are you living, what kind of public school system are you going to send them to, a school that believes that their child, it's not annoying at all, it's always a privilege.
My question is, I know Candice, you touched on it just a little bit, but what would you do? What's the alternative to big pharma? That's not something I'm an expert on. I don't really follow that very often. That's something I'm just now learning about just this past year. So what's the alternative to big pharma?
The alternative,
Yeah, like
a free market solution. Like, I mean, when we're talking about big pharma, you have the same manufacturers of every vaccine. They put in all of these restrictions, so nobody, even with in terms of medicine, I mean, what Trump passed in terms of the right to try, they won't allow anybody to even create medicines, to create alternatives. They make everybody who says like, hey, this is in your cabinet, you can use this to treat this. You're a quack doctor. Another alternative is
Big
just
pharma is
learning
corrupt.
about.
So I guess my question relates somewhat to transgender people and how you feel like people who are transgender, who transition at a certain point in their life, who become very patriotic, who become very passionate about this country and still want to care for and make their part and just kind of contribute. How would you go about, taking care of and just interacting with those people as they try to, fight the constant media and just the way that things are so pandered all the time? I'm just curious to how you would argue that.
Well, it would depend on that individual, because I have a person that I work with who is a gay man who doesn't believe in gay marriage. So, and that seems like very strange. You would never think of that, right? But I know transgendered individuals who believe and speak out on the fact that they believe that transgenderism or dysphoria is a mental disorder. And so they approach that platform from a conservative perspective, and speak out against the idea of trying to convince children.
You can't have Bill White at the Daily Wire. And you can't support Dave Rubin getting married and having kids.
And they are great contributors to conservatism because they like explain what led to their gender dysphoria. For example, I had a man by the name of Walt Heyer who was transgendered for 20 years, went through with the bottom surgery, and lived as a woman for 20 years before he woke up and realized that he was lied to from the time that he was a kid. And he talked about how high a percentage it is of people that are transgender who are raped when they're children, right? And rather than addressing that trauma that makes them want to get rid of their entire existence of who they are, want to transition into something completely different, you have a society that's handing them hormone pills. And obviously he had sex change regret. So he is one of the loudest voices for conservatism because he's approaching it from an angle of, here is where I am. Now, if you're talking about the differences between like, can you be a transgender conservative? Can you be transgender and say that on the social issues I'm not conservative, but I'm fiscally conservative? Like, I'd have to get into the weeds of what you're referring to, like, but I believe in free markets and capitalism, and that becomes the job of the RNC. And I think that what's happened a lot, and there's a deeper conversation that should be had, and I wish we had more.
Sorry, but Turning Point and Charlie Kirk has trans people there too.
What it means to be a Christian. And so I need to understand what you're, and we shouldn't do that. We should not do that, right?
You should not be embracing Caitlyn Jenner.
Bring as many voters into, like, into the camp and see what we have in common and what are things that we agree on and what we're fighting left on. The job of Christians is to take a stand against things that are against the Bible and against Christianity. And we've been conflating that a lot lately, and there's a deeper conversation. So I kind of over answered your question a little bit, but I'd have to know more about how that transgender individual was entering in the conservative conversation theologically.
Could you vote for Caitlyn Jenner or Bill White if they were running for office? That's my question.
I guess, yeah, more fiscally, I guess, would be a better way to go about it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of gets into the Dave Rubin debate. Like, can you be a conservative gay person because you're fiscally conservative? Of course you can.
No, you can't be. You're a liberal. You're not a conservative. I'm a liberal. I know you can't be. I'm not a conservative. I'll never say I'm a conservative. I have conservative values on the physical stuff, and except for the religious stuff, I am a liberal on the social stuff too. But you're a liberal. You're not a conservative, Candice. Stop lying. You're not a conservative. Dave Rubin's not a conservative, and he should not be on the Blaze anymore. They should fire his fucking ass.
I'm Bill Stupid. Graduated this semester. However, I should have had some hindsight on the industry I was getting into. There's a lot that I'm actually worried about publishing, making, or creating, frankly, with a lot of the topics or points that I want to talk about, because I fear the reaction, fear the response that I'm getting. And God knows you two have gotten some severe responses, very negative responses from what I like to call this new internet death threat culture. My question is a two-part. How have you two personally dealt with those threats? And where do you think this sort of culture of extreme retaliation, especially via the internet, has come
Well, the people that very dish it out.
Keyboard warriors just do not at all bother. They're not even, I don't even read the comments. Like, I literally.
Yeah, but they do it to Michelle Malkin, Nick Fuentes, these people like Lauren Loomer, Mario Minopoulos. They even attack Gavin McGinnis, who started the Power Boys. So who's calling the kettle black there, Turning Point?
On Instagram. Got it. Cool. I find that it's tremendous cowardice. It's not.
Well, cowardice when you ban Nick Fuentes and Mario Minopoulos and Michelle Malkin. That's cowardice, isn't it, Charlie Kirk? Isn't that cowardice? You can't speak against it when you're canceling people all the time and tell them they can't speak. It's like cancel if you don't want to go see them speak, but not allow them to speak like Michelle Malkin and Nick Fuentes. You ain't got no right to sit there and speak about cancel. Guess Nick Fuentes can't even fly, man. You have a problem with that? He's more canceled than you, Nick. Than you, Charlie Kirk.
Conversation with you, but internet thugging is just like it's just lame. It's just lame.
Yeah, the internet has a perverse incentive structure, right? So introverts end up spending.
But you don't seem to speak out against Nick Fuentes being attacked. You're saying he can't fly, but that's not a problem to you because you don't like him. See, like if you can't fly, Charlie Kirk.
It's actually interesting the people that would be willing to say something to your face are the people that are probably actually dishing out the most amount of tax. So you got to remember that, right?
Well, he did say it to your face, and you banned him. He's not a coward. He's not a keyboard warrior. Nick Fuentes has the guts to say it to your face, and you cut him a white nationalist like Ben Shapiro because he wants Asian and Europe-style culture in America, and that happens to be mostly white people. But I guess that makes him a white nationalist then.
Sir.
Hey, how you doing? Candice, just want to let you know that I appreciate you a lot.
I don't appreciate these people, hypocrites. Support gay people like Rob Smith and Dave Rubin. Kicking out Nick Fuentes because he wants a culture like Europe and Asia that's mostly white. He's a white nationalist. Bang people you don't like, huh? But you kicked out Brandy Love, but you have Dave Rubin speak. Yeah, that's really great, huh? You say even though she didn't do her porn stuff that day, but gay is okay though.
According to the FBI, the total was perversity. With that being said, choose to be a victim. I'm a victim.
couple questions that I really want to ask about you, especially if it's also for the city. And I want to get fired just yet. But I'm tired of spineless leaders, spineless politicians, and there's a lot of things that I really want to get out right now. But
You're a gutless weenie if you don't speak up against the cops being working for the state. The state police now, it's a police state. The cops are sitting there harassing Sarah Gonzalez, even though I don't agree with her on Dave Rubin having kids, but guess what? She still shouldn't be assaulted.
so 5 years, a lot of exposed to these punks.
Yeah, fellow cops that do police state tactics.
Well, the first thing
Like
that I
during
would say
COVID.
is to figure out how you want to get involved, because right now you're mincing your words because you have to, which is why Brandon had to leave the police force because he was tired of mincing his words. And he felt like he could support the police force better if he could say everything he wanted to, and I think that he's found that that's true. So if you want to get involved on like a smaller level with community events and stuff, I run Blexit.com. Charlie runs CPUSA. We both have tabs that say get involved, and we can link up.
They turned away Point USA, turned away Gary McGinnis, Mal Manopoulos, Rowan Loomer, Michelle Malkin, Nick Fuentes. Turn away Point USA. Oh yeah, Brandy Love.
Coming from absolutely nothing there and being on the side of the police and on the side of law and order, that's a story people need to hear, and if you want to get involved on a louder level,
Speak up against the police force.
Don't care what they say, what they have to
They
say.
fire you, they fire you.
All the big good stuff that they think gives you street cred, you got it, right? So say exactly what. I love that.
Our team will
Get
get in touch, and I'll just say
that's
one
awesome.
final thing.
Thank you.
You see the judicial system playing out the way it should, but make no mistake, that prosecution, I still believe, needs to be sued civilly for trying to destroy that kid's life. That was a reckless prosecution from the beginning. They withheld this exculpatory evidence from drone footage from the FBI. There's a lot there, but you asked specifically what could be done. Well, you live in Kenosha. If you guys remember, the governor could have put a stop to this by mobilizing the National Guard early. So I'm going to just say this personally. I'm sorry. Yeah, not before the 24 hours, right? He was given aforementioned notice, and it was 72, not 24, and
paid for 3 contraindicated medicines, and then including a morphine push at the end. And a doctor, after they gave the first medicine, was lorazepam, the doctor wrote his own DNR. So that means do not resuscitate, if you're not familiar with what that means. He wrote that within 14 minutes of giving her this medicine, unbeknownst to the family. Family knew nothing about this. The daughter ended up dying, and the family was on FaceTime yelling at the doctors to please save our daughter. The doctor said, there's 30 nurses out in the hallway because of shift change. And Grace, the girl, her sister Jessica was there. Jessica said, save my sister. The family's on FaceTime saying, please save our daughter. They said, no, she's DNR. And that was the first time the family ever heard about her being DNR. So the question is, this is not the singular episode of like this in the country. There are hundreds of thousands of people being killed intentionally in hospitals. How do we end this?
Well, I'm a big believer that they intentionally killed people in hospitals during COVID. They wouldn't let family members in there.
And they tagged it as COVID deaths. Yeah, you had COVID, but you died from a heart attack, or you died from overeating by being obese, or you died from something else, and they say it's COVID.
Asthma attack is about he got a very short window of time. I was having an asthma attack, and the doctor had the life-saving medicine and said that the CDC had.
Man, see, that's just, I cannot believe this, man.
Kill American citizens so they could fluff numbers and say that people died of COVID.
That's crazy, man.
The use of ventilators makes entirely no sense. We need oxygen, not compression on their chest. We're dealing with something that's in their chest. So from top to bottom, yes, our government.
That's crazy, man. That's crazy.
And
but Turning Point doesn't stand for anything.
People should face long prison sentences. People should face tribunals because of what they did during COVID. And it's not even that.